everybody. Welcome to That Expert Show, where you help run the show. I'm Anna Canzano. Thanks so much for joining us today. Our topic today is youth sports. You know, youth sports have changed a lot since my younger days of playing Little League softball and playing volleyball in high school. They feel, and maybe this is just the grown-up in me, but they feel so much more competitive these days, so much more geared toward getting a kid an athletic scholarship for college. I don't remember there being this much focus on club sports. When I was younger, I know there was like ASA for softball. But I just wonder about the folks out there, parents out there, who have questions about their kids when it comes to youth sports. And there's a lot involved in this. There's dynamics with coaches. There's dynamics with other parents. That's a whole big kind of relationship issue that parents are faced with. And then there's the issue with kids and motivating kids and their playing time. If this is an episode that you think would help somebody that you know, go ahead and give it a share, give it a like right now, share it with your friends if you'd like, or share it as a watch party. And maybe some of the information that we're covering here with our expert today will help you out. I want to let you know that this episode is brought to you by Reflex Knee Clinic. They are the experts when it comes to knee pain. These are the folks that have helped us so much. Stick around and I'll tell you a very personal reason why I love Reflex Clinic and how they helped us get back to life. Our expert today is the author of the best-selling book, 9 Innings of Hitting. He's also host of the podcast Baseball Families, presented by Baseballism. So his background is in baseball, but his expertise and his wisdom go far beyond that. Joining us live from Peoria, Arizona today is Troy Silva. Troy, I understand that you got your background in professional baseball for a period of time, and that's kind of where you learned a lot of these things, but your learning and your knowledge have definitely evolved over time as well.
Yeah, I guess it started with professional baseball. Obviously, I played baseball since I was young, like most people. And then as I grew, I guess, into playing more, I had a lot of awesome coaches. I've had a lot of people that helped me out through the way. And then after I was done playing professional baseball, I got into the coaching and the teaching, specifically on the hitting side and the fielding side, and coached some teams. So it's been about 20 years. I've coached every level possible, from little guys all the way to, professional athletes, both boys and girls. So I guess being in the environment and kind of seeing what I saw over the last 20 years, in essence, kind of made me an expert or a professional in what I do. So I love it. It's awesome, but it's also there's some need for some change right now in the culture. That's for sure.
Yeah, you talk a lot about that. I was watching some of your videos on YouTube, and it's fascinating because I think that the philosophies that you apply toward helping kids manage themselves and build confidence in sports really can apply to kids and parents all across the board. One of your most recent videos was about hitting and how to not get hung up on what you're doing wrong as a hitter, because that might be the thing that's actually holding you back from being a great hitter.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as I've grown and done this over the last couple of decades, I've learned that the baseball, softball side of things is just kind of an avenue to really teach life lessons and to really encourage kids and to build that confidence that you just talked about. When I'm doing baseball coaching or whatever it is we're doing, I realize that there's a bigger picture to it. And it's not always about the moment that you're in right now. It's not about, are you 0 for 4, 4 for 4 at the time? It's not about playing college ball. It's not about, the next level. It's about enjoying the level that you're at and understanding the big picture. And I think that's where a lot of coaches, players, and parents specifically get caught up into this kind of fear of missing out type of phase that I see a lot. And they don't realize the importance of the here and now and the confidence that is built through sports, not just baseball and softball.
It's interesting too because there's so much more focus now. Like, I think when I was a kid, and probably when you were a kid too, like, kids were encouraged to play different sports. Like, I was encouraged to go try different things and see what really, really hit home for me. So I was playing basketball in middle school and softball and, running and doing all these different things. But now it feels like so many kids are honing in on a single sport at a very early age. What's your thought on that? Do kids burn out on their joy of that sport?
Absolutely. I see it all the time. So I just moved to Arizona here. I think been about 9 months or so ago. And what we do for kids and families, we offer free evaluations for kids. And in that evaluation, I always ask, hey, do you play other sports? Just want to get their history and their background of kind of where they're at. And I'm not joking. I can probably count on one hand out of the hundreds of evaluations that I've done so far that kids actually play more than just baseball. And quite honestly, I do a lot of help for college placement type stuff for the kids in our program, talk to college coaches all over the country. And nobody wants one sport athletes. Everybody wants kids that play multiple sports for several reasons. Number one, like you just said, is it helps you become a better athlete and you kind of hone into what you're good at, what you're not good at. Number two, it gives you that energy and that excitement to get back to the sport that you love. So specifically with baseball, obviously I'm in Arizona where it's sunny all the time and I love it. But at the same time, that doesn't mean just because the sun's out that you need to be playing baseball 12 months out of the year. I would encourage kids highly to go play other sports, go play basketball, football, whatever it is, to get away from that sport. Even if your goals are to play at the highest level that you can play at in baseball, it's always great for the mind to renew, refresh, get away from it. Specifically in baseball, too, you need to give your arm that care. You need to give your arm that 3 to 4 months of rest of not playing. And it just gives you more excitement for the game. I agree with you on that the kids get burnt out big time with that. A lot of it, too, is the focus of playing at college level, right? It's like this fear of missing out again, to where if I'm not doing this, and this, and this, I'm not going to play at the college level, which is basically completely opposite of that. College coaches want those athletic, multi-sport kids.
That's so interesting. I don't know if most parents know that.
They do now.
They do now, thanks to you. Tying into this is a question from Brent on Facebook. He is specifically asking, at what age should your child just choose one sport to focus on? Or should this ever happen? What if your kid really excelled at one sport but participated in many? What age should they just focus on the one they excel at?
Now, as they get older, and what I mean by older is probably, their junior year in high school, they should know by then what sport they're good at, what sport they excel in, what sport they like more, and what opportunities they have in that specific sport. So my advice is exactly, there is no age to when they should stop playing other sports. But by the time they're a junior, senior in high school, they should know kind of what they're good at and what they like. And I told a kid just the other day, hey, if you want to play college baseball, that's great. But if you like playing basketball, just make sure during basketball season you're putting in your hitting work or whatever it is you're doing. So I encourage them to do it until basically the college level. But I even have high school kids in the college level playing multi-sports too as well. So I wouldn't put an age limit on it, and I definitely wouldn't focus on keeping your 7, 8-year-olds playing one sport. That's for sure.
That's too young to just focus on one. Your expertise covers a lot of different areas, and one of them is dealing with coaches and playing time. On Facebook, for example, Curtis is saying that one of his pet peeves is coaches who don't let all of their players have a chance to play. Can we talk a little bit about playing time and what your perspective is, both having been a player and having coached coaches through this?
Yeah, I'm going to throw out a little plug really quick. I think the next show that I'm doing on the Baseball Family podcast will be exactly just that. What age group? They should be playing this or that and all that kind of good stuff. But anyway, the playing time issue for coaches really should depend on what level they're coaching at and who they're coaching. Obviously, if you're, a high school senior, then playing time is what it is. The coaches are going to put the people in there that they feel like are going to, make the best opportunities for the teams. The same thing with college. Obviously, at the youth levels, the little league levels, that kind of 7 to 12-year-old age, I think everybody should be playing everywhere. And I know Little League does a good job of making sure they get so many innings in the infield and the outfield and all that kind of good stuff. But as they turn into that 13, 14-year-old type of age, I think there should be a little bit more of the best players play, and it really teaches kids to work hard and to try to go earn a spot. But at the same time, I completely agree, depending on the environment of the coach, that kids should be playing multi positions. They should be giving the opportunities to play and not just riding the pine or sitting the bench at a young age. So I think that to answer that question specifically, a lot of that is dictated by the team environment, how good the team is. Are they competitive club travel ball stuff, or is it just kind of a little league fun experience, rec ball, and understanding what they have, and also understanding that it's about the development of the player versus just winning some stupid Wednesday night game in April or whatever.
There's no game that's stupid, right? Come on.
But I guarantee you they'll forget about it right after the game and they'll be going to Wendy's or whatever they're doing.
That's sometimes the highlight of the game is the celebration afterwards, whether you win or lose. Hey, I'm going to take a minute here and just talk about the folks at Reflex Knees, because I don't know do you have any sort of knee issues, Troy, after, years and years of working your body to the extreme?
I had bad ankles my whole life, but no, I tried catching one time and my knees couldn't handle it. I'm like, sorry, coach, I ain't doing that. But my knees, thank God, are good right now as my ankles are bad just because of basketball.
Yeah, basketball. See, and that's the thing is, like, a lot of people like you, my husband played college baseball and really wore out his knees. I mean, I think there was some genetic history as well, but I think his athleticism in his younger years has caught up with him. And, back a few years ago, he was having problems just even working out or teaching our daughter how to ride her bicycle without his knees totally swelling up. He wound up having 3 different knee surgeries, including microfracture, that he had to recover from, busted both patellar tendons. And then he found the people at reflexknees.com. Reflex Knee Clinic helped him with these really interesting non-surgical modalities. So they did PRP treatment, which is platelet-rich plasma treatment, as well as stem cell treatment. And it's been amazing to see him turn his life around. He's been able to exercise and be the active father and husband that he wants to be without all of that pain. So if you or somebody that you know, whether it's a spouse or a partner or a family member or a friend, has knee pain, go talk to the people at reflexknees.com, Reflex Knee Specialist. You can read about his case study on their website and just give them a call. It's free to go in and schedule a consultation with them and see what they have to say. So just want to put the word out there for the folks at Reflex Knees. We were talking about coaching earlier with you, Troy, and something that came up on Twitter, which I think is fascinating too, is the concept of parent coaches. For example, Kelly on Twitter says her pet peeve is parent coaches that only want to coach their own kids and won't teach other kids the skills that they need. Barry seconded her thoughts and said, definitely, my son had 3 parent coaches on his high school team who would coach their kids and promote their kids for every award possible. They were delusional. What's your take on parent coaches? What is your advice for parent coaches?
Well, this could be a topic that I can get in serious trouble about, but I'll be as honest as I can possibly be. Let me just start by this. Without parent coaches, there are no teams out there as far as, the youth level type stuff. I mean, you have to have parent coaches, really, because it's not like these professional coaches are wanting to coach 12-year-olds. So it's like we have to have parent coaches in the youth culture and environment to make it successful and to operate. With that being said, I would agree that there's probably 2 types of parent coaches. And I'm a parent coach. I coach my own kids, and I've learned what not to do. And I'm sure I don't do everything perfect, but there's that parent coach that's all about their kid, and that's all they care about, and that's all they do. And they need to make a change because they're affecting other people. I think it goes back to the heart of the coach on what their true purpose is and what their true role is as a coach. It's hard to coach your own child, I'll tell you that much. But it's that fine line of like being their dad and being their coach, and it's not an easy thing to do. On the flip side of it, these coaches have to understand that people are watching 2 players on the field. They're watching their son or daughter, and they're watching the coach's son or daughter, and they're watching everything that they do. So it's that fine line of understanding both of those, and then being realistic about what's going on. I have a son who's 12, who's a pretty good athlete, plays at the majors level at 12, and I intentionally sometimes throw him in right field all the time and bat him down in the lineup just because I don't want to deal with parents, right? So it's like it's one of those things where it's a really hard situation to do, but I also don't want to just bash parent coaches, because there's a lot of good parent coaches out there that do it the right way. So to kind of throw it over a blanket and say all parent coaches stink and they need to stop and it's this, I think it's just certain scenarios that turn up that way.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to encourage them. And I just actually posted a tweet this morning that basically says it's not a big deal. So if my son's playing right field, it's not a big deal. If my son's batting in the 9 hole, it's not a big deal. It really isn't that big of a deal. And it really comes back to the attitude of the whole community and the culture of the team. And I think that goes on the coach's shoulders too. If the coach communicates early and is really honest and upfront, like what the expectations are, there's usually not as many problems. And when the coach can't control the parents, that kind of stuff takes place, and then you end up having this gossip and drama-filled environment, which nobody wants to be a part of.
Yeah, that's it can get pretty ugly. Speaking of some ugliness, Chris on Twitter, who is a PA announcer, says he takes issue with the parents who yell at officials. It's the biggest reason OSAA sports loses refs within 2 years of starting. Once the old guard retire, there's going to be a shortage of refs, because who really wants to get paid like a minimal amount of money to be verbally abused by not just parents, but I think kids can get a little nasty these days too.
Well, I'm out there all the time, almost every weekend for the last 20 years, and I see that exactly. I think umpires on the baseball field are literally treated like garbage and less of a human being, which is sad in my opinion. No matter what calls they get right or wrong, one side or the other is going to disagree with it. Now, again, I think it goes back to the environment of the team and the coach laying down the expectations of what they do. When we have teams and we coach, we have our parent meetings and say, this is what we do. You never, ever say anything to the umpire except for, hey, how you doing? If they mess up, you don't say anything. If you make a good call, you don't say anything. You don't ever communicate with the umpires. If the umpires mess up, usually it's not on purpose, and especially at the youth level, you got to realize these guys aren't trained professionals. They're going to mess up, and you have to understand that it's part of the game. It's actually part of the failure. I can't stand when I see posts on social media about, oh, this umpire ruined the game. Well, what about the other 6 innings where your team didn't hit the ball? You know what I mean? So it's like, I really think it's a product of the environment that they're allowed to do. And a lot of that, honestly, comes down to the coach and again, what their purpose is and what their role is and what they allow, because a coach can instantly stop that if they really wanted to. I was in a national championship game coaching like a 14U team like 10 years ago, and our parents got a little crazy. And I just stopped the game. I said, hey, chill out. And I just basically said, that's not what we do here. And it all just completely diffused the situation. So I think if the coach is the one yelling and screaming at the umpire, I think it's really easy for a parent to jump on board and do that same thing. So I really think it's a product of the environment and the coach's purpose.
Interesting. So let's flip it to the positive then. What can parents do to benefit coaches, and, the byproduct is benefiting the team?
Show up and smile and enjoy watching their player play baseball, the game that they love, or softball, and not live and die on every call or every at bat or every swing or anything like that. I think if you have the attitude of just enjoying watching your kid get the opportunity to play, because that's what it is. It's an opportunity to play. It's not a right that you get to play. I think it changes the mindset of the bigger picture. And it goes back to, it's not that big of a deal. If my kid goes 0 for 4 in a weekend tournament, it's not that big of a deal. They're not going to lose a scholarship. They're not going to gain a scholarship when they go 4 for 4. And I think if you can have the attitude of the here and now and just understand that it's an opportunity, it's a blessing that my child is healthy enough to get to play. And I tell our teams all the time, there's tons of kids all over the nation and the world that don't get to play for whatever reason. They can't afford it. They're hurt. They're injured. They have disease, whatever it is. You need to be thankful that you're gifted with this ability and you have the opportunity to play. So I think the parents, it goes back to the culture of this whole college piece of meat dangling over their head, like it's all about college. Just enjoy the here and now. And if your player's good enough, they'll have an opportunity to play at that level. But if you're making it a horrible experience when they're young, I guarantee you they're going to get burnt out and they're not going to make it a fun experience as they grow up. And they'll probably end up going to play something else or stop playing sports in general.
It is interesting because I think with, the price of college being what it is these days, it's very tempting for parents, if they spot that their kid has some kind of athletic ability toward a particular sport. Don't you think that, the rise of college costs kind of coincides with this increased pressure to get kids into like a D1, sport, or at least gain some kind of college scholarship? Have you seen that progress hand in hand over the years?
Yes, I would agree with that, but I also would say that it's the cost of youth sports in general these days. These parents are paying thousands upon thousands of dollars for some of these select club travel bowl organizations, and then they expect a certain thing out of it. And when then that doesn't happen, they get angry, they get upset, and the whole negativity starts playing out. But yes, the just to clear the college thing up, nobody gets full ride college scholarships in baseball. There's 11.7, I think, college scholarships in baseball. So that means out of the 30 kids, if you're getting 25, 30%, that's really, really good. So the whole college scholarship thing, if you want your kid to play college ball, listen to this right now. Have your kid get good grades so they can get academic money, because coaches love that. So if they can save money on the whole scholarship side, then that's great. But I definitely wouldn't be thinking about the money piece. I mean, it's all expensive, and yes, you might get a little bit for baseball, but baseball doesn't take in enough money to actually give them more scholarships, unfortunately.
So you mentioned club sports. Let's talk about that, because like I mentioned at the beginning, this was not such a big deal when I was growing up, but it is a huge deal now. I mean, family members, we've done our own share of like club volleyball, travel teams, travel expenses. And boy, you're right, it can add up thousands and thousands of dollars for, I guess, what parents are hoping will be that stepping stone toward opportunities to play in college. But can you put that into perspective for us? Like, where are we at as a culture with club sports, and just how important and vital that has felt like it has become?
Well, there's a couple of things to that. Yes, it is expensive. And yes, I get a parent side of things of, hey, I put all this money into it and I feel like I'm not getting anything out of it. But you can't expect to put money into something for the club level and really get the opportunities that you want. Because I think there's a couple of things that are going in club sports. I think there's a lot of kids playing club sports that shouldn't be playing club sports and should be spending or saving that money on development, or playing little league or something like that. There's tons of different opportunities where you can play baseball for cheaper and definitely get the same experience as far as the playing time. The club sports it's grown crazily. So like 20 years ago, there wasn't that much of this stuff. When I played, you just played on your local Babe Ruth Little League team or whatever it is. So it's become a big business type of thing for people, with the hopes of exactly that for parents, where, if I pay this amount of money to play on this team, then there's going to be more opportunities. Well, the opportunities will come if your child is good enough. And what I see specifically down here is a lot of kids play so much, and all they do is spend money playing games, that there's no room for development and actually getting better, so you have more opportunities. So I think there's also a lot of kids that just shouldn't be playing club ball. They're just not good enough. I think that a dad, right, wants to get the best for their kids, so they organize this team, and then they go on these club ball AA tournaments and get whooped, and there's not a lot of development, and then kids get discouraged. So I can go a whole bunch of different ways on that, but yes, it's totally changed. As far as like the last couple decades with that. And I think it's a couple reasons. A lot of it's money, let's just be honest. And then the other thing is unrealistic expectations from parents. You think you got, if I play on this team, then my son's automatically going to go here, here, and here, which is not realistic.
Interesting. So then let's talk a little bit about kids, that conversation that you have after the game. We all understand the reason behind not shouting coaching advice at your kid from the sidelines. But, that ride home, that conversation, what's your advice on how you handle that conversation, whether it's a win, but probably more importantly, when it's a loss?
Let's just start with the post-game speech by the coach. No one's listening to you, coaches, just so you know, especially if they lost. So, and especially if they're younger, if you're coaching a 12U, 13U team, under than that, they're looking at you, but they're not listening. They're worried about going to the next game or going to their friend's house and going swimming. So keep your post-game speeches short and keep them positive too. I think nobody wants to leave the field thinking that they're a failure or they stunk. Obviously, they know what they need to do. I usually will say, hey, good job. We'll see you next week. And then when we have practice or whatever, we'll talk about what they felt they needed to work on. I'll ask them, what do we suck at? What do we need to work on? And they'll answer that question. As far as the parental car ride home, that's where it gets a little crazy sometimes. I think it goes back to unrealistic expectations by parents. And a lot of these parents never played, so they understand the pressures involved and the anxiety involved and the failure involved. So I've learned over the years to basically say, hey, I'm proud of you. I love watching you play, and just kind of leave it at that. If they want to talk about something, if they bring it up, then we'll talk about it. But the simple words, hey, I love watching you play. I'm proud of you for having a good attitude, is like one of the best things you can do for car rides home. And if they stunk or they were horrible, like, change the subject, do something different. Don't harp on it, because there's so much failure, specifically in baseball, that parents are unrealistic about, and no one wants to be mentally defeated after they get physically beat up on the baseball field. So it's that simple. I love you, son or daughter. You're awesome. I appreciate you working hard and love watching you play.
Yeah, that is great advice. What do you do with the kid? Let's see, how do I phrase this properly? I have a lot of conversations with parents who say, like, oh, my kid's just not motivated. Like, they're not a self-starter. How do I motivate my kid? Is that something that comes from within, or can you, as a coach or a parent, instill motivation in kids?
I think you can and you can't. I think there's some kids that just have never been challenged physically or mentally to go get what they can get. But then there's also just some kids that just don't have the desire. So it's like, if they don't have the desire and they don't want to put the time and effort and the work in, there's not much you can do about it. And I find myself doing 90% of what I do, motivating kids to get more out of themselves. So, I'm a professional motivator, I guess. And I have a son too, that's 12, that's a little bit laid back, and he's like, whatever, sometimes, and sometimes he's really excited. But at the same time, I always think about, he's 12 years old. And if he wants to do this, he'll end up doing it. I think sometimes the parents want it more than the kids do. But at the same time, with this generation, this culture of social media and iPads and video games, I think it's good to challenge kids to get out there and do something athletically. And if we have to make them do it sometimes, it's for their benefit.
We have a question as well from Heather. This one's on Facebook. She says, we've got increased knowledge about conditions such as CTE now. Knowing what we know now, how can we ensure our children's long-term health and safety if they choose to pursue a physical sport?
That's interesting, because baseball's obviously not a contact sport. The only thing you got to worry about is a fastball coming at your head or a fastball off the bat at your head as a pitcher. And that's a whole different topic. But as far as like the football and the contact sports, I know in soccer there's a lot of head stuff going on too as well. And with baseball specifically, I'm no professional in that aspect of it, so I probably can't answer that specific question. But as far as the baseball side of things, let me just talk about the toughness, I guess. There's a fine line of teaching toughness, but also being smart when a kid's injured. Like when we coach, I don't care what level you're at, we teach kids, when you're in the box, you're tough. And if you get hit by the pitch, you run down to first base. I don't care how bad it hurt, you're getting down there. Now, if they're hitting the head, then obviously you got to be smart about it and careful about it. But there's a fine line in this culture of kind of coddling kids and then teaching toughness. I tell people all the time, when I coach kids, I'm teaching them toughness out of love because I care about their future. But at the same time, you got to be smart with kind of, just certain things with injuries and stuff like that. But as far as the football CT stuff, I don't know what that is.
Okay, very fair enough. Last question for you just has to do with dealing with that parent dynamic. I'm going to circle back to this because it really is kind of a big deal, and it's layered. So it's like, and maybe it has to do with what you're saying with the parents maybe coddling children a little bit when it comes to the emotion of what's happening. So the scenario being, kid goes to practice or a game, kid is yelled at from across the court or across the field by the coach. Kid feels like they were emotionally hurt by that exchange, and then ensues this drama. I think you mentioned that you can cut a lot of that off at the knees just by setting the expectations as a coach early on for the parents. But what other take do you have on that sort of dynamic that can repeat itself to infinity.
The sad part is it happens too much today. I think again it kind of all goes together. It goes back to the money side of things, where a parent puts in money and they have this expectation, and then you see the coaches side of things where there's some out of control parents, and then you have this travel environment that's all about college, and you just add all that stuff up and you create that right there. You create the unrealistic expectations. You feel the emotional instability of kids feeling like they have to perform at a certain level, and then you have the kid or the parents putting too much pressure on them and all that stuff. But as far as that scenario, I have kids that are in the sport, and if I do my due diligence when it comes to them playing whatever sport it is on a specific team. So I will talk to the coach. I will have a conversation with the coach as far as what my expectations are. And if something crazy ever happens, I just take them out of the environment. So if I have an 8-year-old kid that shows up and he's being yelled at and cussed at by a grown man, he's not going to play in that environment. So I will probably embarrass the coach and say, you're doing this wrong. My son's never playing for you again. And I'll look at all the other parents and I'll say, you guys need to leave too, because this is unacceptable. That's how I am. I probably wouldn't handle that as a parent if I was just sitting there, but I would not allow that environment. Now, if the kid's a little bit out of control and he needs some discipline and the coach disciplines him well, I would encourage that environment. So the whole, Johnny Testosterone coach, or the mad guy coach, as I call it, that's always mad at everything, you don't need to play in that environment. Just take them out. Those guys don't need to be coaching anyway. So you have to basically do your due diligence and basically don't allow your kid to be in that environment. But at the same time, there's got to be structure and discipline in this day and age for sure.
Interesting. Any last thoughts?
I have a whole bunch of last thoughts, but I think you hit it on the head. I think this whole baseball truth is kind of what I'm about, and I think we need to make a culture change. Some people come up to me, I don't see what you see all the time. Well, I see craziness on a regular basis, yelling at umpires, crazy parents, unrealistic expectation, Johnny Testosterone coaches. I mean, you see it all the time, and we need to make a change in the culture. I'm not saying we need to soften up the culture by any means. When I coach, I'm pretty hard on the kids, but it's out of love and discipline. But I think that if we can make a collective change and we can understand like the bigger picture and the real purpose of it, which is developing people, I think there would be a whole different mindset of what's going on in the culture today. So if you want to know more about that, go to my Twitter account at Troy P. Silva. The baseball truth stuff is all over the place, but that's my purpose and my goal is to help people make that change.
Awesome. Well, I'll definitely include all of the ways that people can contact you in the show notes for this. And I will create a tip sheet as well based on the information that you've shared in this episode today. Troy, thank you so much. Thanks for sharing your wisdom with us.
I'm an idiot, but God's gifted me with some wisdom, I guess. So I hope it helps.
And humble too. Thanks so much. And thank you for joining us for this episode of That Expert Show. Boy, a lot of truths there. We are developing people in this, not just little miniature athletes. That's the focus. That's what I got out of that as well. Remember, you can always connect with That Expert Show. I'm on Facebook at Anna Canzano, on Twitter and Instagram at That Expert Show. We post the episodes to YouTube on our channel, That Expert Show, and we put it back out to you as a podcast. So wherever it is that you listen to podcasts, whether you're on Apple iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, all those good places, you can find us there as well. Hey, thanks so much for being with us on this episode of That Expert Show. And remember, give us a like, give us a comment, give us a review, and share this information with your friends. I know that there's a lot of you out there that are involved in some way with youth sports, so I figure that this information will be helpful to you and the people that you know. Thanks for being with us. That Expert Show, where you help run the show.